everyone. Great to talk to you again. I'm Monica Niblack, president of LQ Digital, and I'm joined by Lisa Ianza, our senior director of organic search here at LQ. Today, we're going to talk a bit about something we're personally hearing a lot about, and I'm sure you are too if you're on LinkedIn any amount of time. We're hearing about how AI can create an awesome SEO plan in seconds, in minutes. You could have a whole SEO plan. You don't need an agency. But the real question that we keep asking ourselves is who should use these automated SEO or AEO strategies, and will they actually help you get to your goals? Right? So to kick us off today, Lisa, we're hearing more and more marketing leaders say that they're using AI to create their organic strategies. Do you think this is a good idea?
Well, a twofold here. So first, I think that AI is a fantastic research assistant, right? It's an extremely useful tool, but it is just that it's a tool. And so, AI is not accountable for business outcomes, right? It doesn't understand internal resource allocation or budget limitations or development constraints and priorities, all of these things that it cannot factor into creating an SEO strategy. So, I think the short of it is I kind of feel like if you're developing a strategy with AI, you can't have the context that you need. And strategy without context is just advice, right? It's not really a strategy that's going to move the needle for you. So,
Kind of speaking of that context, another thing that I sometimes feel like I'm hearing a bit is are businesses at risk of being the same when they use it, right? You need the context, but don't you need kind of something unique also?
you do. And if you were going to give it that something unique, I think you'd have to feed a novel's worth of information into it to get that. So, the other thing too is like, I think that if you're asking it for strategies, I think that we've seen that AI repeats itself. So your competitors are probably getting the same recommendations because they are so high level, the same
Yeah.
tactics, all those generic things. That means you and your competitors are going after those same strategies, all of those, the same content ideas, the same keywords or topics. So how are you going to differentiate? That's not going to really get you there.
Okay. So just to make sure I'm hearing you right, because obviously if I was a listener, I'll go ahead and say it. I would say, well, aren't you guys a little biased? You're an agency. Like, isn't the whole point, right? Yes, I can see why you might say that. I would be thinking that
Yep.
too. But I think what you're saying is, hell yeah, we'll use it when there's a good place to use it. But you need to be careful about giving like the entire keys to the kingdom to it because you want to make sure it's benefiting you, not
Yeah.
kind of making you the same as all your competitors. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So kind of on that note, if it can make a good strategy in seconds, why are people paying for us? And obviously you just said you don't think it can make a good strategy in seconds,
hmm
but you did say it can do a lot. So what is changing, right? If it's a tool, if we have more tools than we've ever had before, if we have better tools than we've ever had before, what evolves? Why should someone still pay for us? Justify why an agency still matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that some of the biggest reasons are that prioritization that we just mentioned, the decision making and the experience, and especially the human judgment that comes in those strategies. What for your particular ecosystem, for your particular challenges, and everybody's goals are not the same.
Mhm.
Everybody's conversions are not the same. So what are you trying to do? So getting that long experience and that judgment is that's what you're paying for. That's what's going to move the needle. And that's going to allow you to diversify over a long period of time. An AI tool simply can't do that. So I think some executives and business owners might just get caught up in the speed of things might be the solving rather than what actually is going to make a difference to their growth long term, which brings me to a question for you. As being in the executive suite, what do you think is the mindset that's driving the push to use AI instead of actual professionals for the different channels, especially for organic?
Well, first, I was just laughing at your speed comment because I can think of like three scenarios you and I have personally seen recently where, unfortunately, we're having to walk people backwards because I love the enthusiasm and speed teams are trying to run at, but they actually end up doing things that kind of hurt their SEO best practices instead of accelerating. And I think that's the perfect example. When you do it wrong, you don't help yourself. But I mean, look, I think we're all, to your point, to your question, what's driving the growth temptation? I think there's a few kind of key things that are driving it. One, like we are all being told to do more with less, right? I hear it from my clients on a
Mm,
daily basis. I was just talking to kind of an old friend whose whole company just reorged and he's suddenly taking on twice as much as he has, and they've like
mm,
layers have been removed. And it just reminded me of the story I've heard time and time again right now. You look at the Wall Street Journal, you look at the economic sentiment. I was reading an article the other day about just how kind of negative the general sentiment is, despite the positive indicators that we've been hearing about a lot. And in some ways, I think AI is a tool that fits with the feeling we're all having right now, right? If we're all being pushed, we're all, like, okay, well, here is maybe the magic wand in right? Like, it's not. I think we all know that, but you're in a situation where you're being told to do more with us. You're in a situation where your businesses are under pressure. You're in a situation where kind of buyers are a little bit more hesitant than they have been to sign up for bigger things. Well, what are you going to do? Like, that's a hard business problem. Well, suddenly you have this tool that can add speed, that can add efficiency, that can, and that you're hearing others are, right? How many tech companies have we heard do layoffs year to date because AI is helping them? And so, of course, you kind of have to, like, as an executive, you're under all this pressure. Here's an answer, right? So it doesn't surprise me at all that people are going in this route. And let's be clear, I'm seeing in our own business, there are places where it can drive a lot more efficient use, right? But I think the question that I know I'm having with all of our teams, and you've heard it from me a lot, is what are the places where it can drive better outcomes? And what are the places where it can just save you time to go get even better outcomes? And I think that's kind of the balance, right?
mm,
We want to use it, let it run on its own with the right context when it can just drive better outcomes. But most of the time, and I think this ties to what you're seeing, we can use it to get farther down the field. And that's something I'm hearing a lot is a year ago, even a lot of teams hadn't figured out how to use it. But fast forward to today, and I think a lot more teams are understanding how to leverage it. So now we're all getting to the point where we have the same tool sets, and you once again need to figure out how to use that tool set to get above everyone else.
yeah, I think
And
that's an
that's,
important distinction. Yeah.
yeah. And that's really here my big focus at LQ. Like we've rolled out, I think your team just got onto it very recently, right? Our updated version of our agentic platform, LQ Brain. And I feel like in every conversation I have with our product and data team around it, my focus is how can we be outstanding, right? How can we use this to differentiate our clients? How can we use it to help them disrupt and take share? Because if we're using it to just get the same results we would have gotten a year ago faster, they're not going to win in today's market, right? You have
Right.
to use it to really make sure you're thinking harder, you're thinking deeper, and you're going above and beyond. And it's pretty fun to watch what AI can do when it does that, but it's about getting better results.
Yeah, absolutely. If it isn't, then you're like, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah.
What are we
Because I've definitely
wrong?
I've seen some of the earlier pilots, right? I was like,
Right. Just like night and day. Right. Yeah.
great flop, right? I mean, I even had a few posts early on where I was like, oh, it can be my editor. I can still remember my professors in college. You need someone to edit your papers. Okay, well, AI can't. Okay, wait a minute. It's trying to make everything just be the same. That's not what we want to do. I don't
Yeah.
need the same average copy going out. We're not going to get effective results that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I kind of, on that note, I think there's a big question about do you change your strategies because of AI, right? There's the overarching, like, how do you change your team structure and whatnot? And obviously, it can help a lot there. I've seen some really awesome things it can do. But I think there's a more fundamental one of I just feel like every day I see some infographic of here's what AEO is, or here's the difference between SEO and AEO. And then I see some team
Yeah.
forward it to me. And I early on, I remember I would always forward it to your teams, and you guys would be like, what is this? And I'm like, well, it's an interesting thing that I saw like our affiliate team or our media team like forward. And you're like, this is going around from 25 different sources, and it's actually not saying anything. And so I think that kind of question starts to become every agency I know seems to be talking about AEO, but like, do you think people are changing their strategies? Because I'm starting to hear some blowback of, sure, people are talking about AEO, but what are they doing?
Hmm. Absolutely. And it's there definitely is blowback in the industry that's surfacing because the SEOs that have been in this game for a long time and care that we're still focusing on what's actually going to work for the client at long-term strategies and get them towards their goals, they are picking up on the SEOs and the agencies that are just sort of reviving the snake oil, which is unfortunate. We SEOs worked really hard to try and shake that off from the Wild West, really early days of SEO. And so now we're kind of back
The
into
link
it.
farm days?
Yeah, just oh gosh, yes. Don't even think about the keyword stuffing, the link farming, all of just the craziness that went on when Google was in its early days. But I think that, unfortunately, AI has revived some of that. And, you'll see it when there's just this constant like buzzwords being added into sales decks or AO web pages, or agencies just immediately rename SEO to AEO or GEO, whatever they're calling it, AI, SEO. But they haven't really developed a framework
Mhm.
around it or included it within an existing organic framework, right? So, which is a really important part, something that I know at LQ, right? We've been really thoughtful about not sort of jumping into the what I call the FOMO tactics, right? Which everyone piles onto for AI, right? Fear of missing out, the listicles, the spamming of FAQs, those kinds of things. We've been very circumspect in what are we actually going to include that's not going to damage the existing work that's been done by our clients for traditional SEO. And traditional search, right? Because we've seen the data that comes out quarter after quarter. It still holds like 95% or above share with Google.
Yeah, it was kind of a radical strategy we had last year. And by radical, I mean I definitely got some pressure with why are we taking so long to get to market, but we decided to kind of build that visioning platform first, right? LQ Vision, and really get a deep understanding of the data of what's working, what's not, and then build all of our playbooks around it. And I mean, it's working. Our organic department has doubled in the past just few months, but it was definitely a different approach, right? We didn't want to jump on the bandwagon. We wanted to really have a data-backed strategy to drive results. What I guess what does give me a little bit of hope and optimism, and I'd be curious if you feel this way, is I did think it was really interesting that Google recently came out with updates that kind of what fundamentally is driving it. And it seems like, I know you pay a lot deeper attention. I will admit I'm more of a headlines person on a lot of these, but kind of what stuck out to me with some of it was it's really the fundamentals, right? It's kind of boring, but you have Google starting to go on record of the things that matter are the true fundamentals. And I don't know, to me, that kind of seemed like an interesting moment in this whole evolution.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, definitely not abandoning what's worked for decades.
Yeah.
And I think that was really smart because more and more we learn how much popular platforms like ChatGPT depend upon those Google results because they're in their infancy, right? As we've talked about before. And so they don't have all the signals sorted out. That's why they're so easy to spam. And so, yeah, not abandoning those basics, not abandoning, and I would go beyond like even the basics, not abandoning the core of what makes search work and so effective.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, the way I've been thinking at it is it's not an either or, it's an evolution, right? So I do want to make sure I'm going on record saying we're not here saying all of this stuff is hype and AEO doesn't matter and it's exactly the same as organic. That's
Definitely.
absolutely not true.
We're not saying
right? That's not
no.
at all what we're saying. I think what we're saying is in this world, kind of like everything else you have, there's more and more noise, and finding the things that will truly drive results for your business is important because if you're not careful, you can end up in this kind of stream of bad advice and bad content and bad recommendations.
Hmm.
And what we hate seeing, and I know you've seen this quite a bit on some clients you're taking over, is people who are really truly trying to drive results for their business. Like they're really focused on it, but unfortunately, just the advice they're getting is not right. But if you're kind of not technical and not spending as much time truly understanding what's happening as we are, because we are an agency, we have the ability and the need to go focus on it that you do not have if you're kind of one person on a team responsible for it. Like you can really get steered the wrong way. And I think that's what really has me
Definitely.
concerned.
Yeah, and that makes me so sad when I see that people have like blown up their progress and blown up effective strategies and we definitely that's not our goal. That does not work. We don't want any
Yeah,
of that. Yeah.
I was looking at someone who was kind of a prospect the other day, and it was really unfortunate because it looked like they had been having this kind of steady progress. And then they had put all this effort in, and you just saw them fall. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, like now we have to go recover that. But
Hmm.
kind of on that point, there is hype, and there's real true things that you need to evolve. So
Hmm.
help us cut through the noise a little bit. What do you think are some examples of hype that people should just ignore? And kind of what are one or two things that you think are really true evolutions that people should focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, hype, I would say chasing every new AI platform and tool. Everybody's got them. That's, kind of what we were talking a little about earlier is make sure that if you're buying into a tool, that it's giving you the information that you actually need. Real prompts, real tracking, as much as you can get that, because there's all limitations just because we don't have access to the data from the platforms, right?
Mhm.
That's slowly starting to leak out. So if you're being promised that it can dazzle and can do a lot more than that, that needs to be a red flag. So the other thing is just rewriting websites for AI. We mentioned earlier about FAQ spamming. There's listicles that people were jumping on board with that are now definitely causing problems, and Google's cracking down on those. So these are the kinds of things where if you hear about a lot of tactic-based type moves, those are things that you really need to think about. Do those actually fit in with a broader, more holistic, organic strategy? If they don't, then that's something you probably need to question. If they do, you're probably on the right track. But if you're
Interesting.
being promised pie in the sky, that's just like we ignore SEOs. The guy can get you number one for these terms in 6 weeks. That has always existed. You need to steer clear of those people. It's the same with people who are touting the AI progress.
So
Uh,
if it seems too good to be true, it probably is,
it probably is,
unfortunately.
and that, yep.
Gosh, I wish I had a magic wand, but and second, if it supports a bigger strategy, it's probably worth doing. But if you can't really see how a piece like a certain thing would do anything except maybe game something short term,
Hmm.
then then you are at risk if you take it on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Hmm. And for you, I wanted to ask, that brings to mind, I mean, for business owners, for executives, some have really aggressive goals that they have to go after now with this renewed interest. I mean, what do you think, being an agency
Yeah.
head, what do you think, what are some things that they can do that help identify legitimate agencies from the snake oil agencies out there?
Data. Right. And I think I'm already starting to hear this in the sophisticated buyers, and it's good because I think a year ago people were only saying, hey, I need to tell my board I'm doing something. Right. But now the sophisticated buyers, the ones who understand kind of they need to cut through the noise, they want to understand the proof and the reasons. And like I said, that's how we've always operated, right?
Mhm.
Why? What is the data back strategy? And I think the people who can kind of point to here's what we did and here's why it worked, and therefore here's the data we're seeing in your site and why we're proposing the strategy. Like those people can actually have a conversation. But if you can't get anyone to kind of answer the second or third why, I think that's kind of a signal. So spend a little bit extra time just having that conversation. And if it seems like they can't adapt to your business or your goals or give you a data point as to how it ties to your business, to me, that's a red flag.
Yep, absolutely. Getting deeper, asking harder questions,
I say
requiring
all this and I'm like, and those are the buyers that take a lot of time, but no, it's fun, right?
it's not going to close next week.
How much free advice do I have to give? No, I'm joking. But no, that's why we really like, at LQ, like we've talked about this a lot. How much should we streamline the process? But I always push back to a point because I'm like, we all collectively need to understand what we're signing up for,
Hmm.
or we're not having success in the same way that a buyer needs to understand that the agency does too, if they're truly building a strategy that's for you. Because
Yeah,
otherwise, you're like, we fully believe in that. And I think all the good agencies I knew do because you want to make sure you're selling something you can deliver.
100%.
And, okay, we're talking a lot about all the different sides of it, but I want to go back to something that we were talking about earlier because I do want to ensure like we're not we're not suggesting you can't leverage AI. We're not suggesting it's not changing things. We're just suggesting there's places where it's really useful and there's places where it's not. So maybe we should go a little bit deeper on that. Like, what should you be doing differently because of AI? What is one thing that you believe absolutely is evolving?
Right. Yeah. So one thing that is legitimate, one thing that will make a difference. So one thing that I feel very strongly, one, it should also, for starters, it should benefit your traditional search organic strategy. Um, when you think about these, but one thing that companies should absolutely focus on is building stronger brand narratives. So this has always been beneficial for search engines and for SEO, but for AI and AEO or slash geo, it is something that has more of an emphasis now. And this is mainly because these tools aren't programmed, they're not designed to say, you know what, I'm not sure, there's not really any information out there on that. It will make it up on its own.
Yeah.
So it also will glean information from competitors. We've definitely heard unfortunate stories of malicious information being placed out there. The AI picks it up and then sort of latches onto it, and that becomes part of the brand's
Mhm.
narrative, the competitor's narrative. So controlling this as much as you can is becoming very, very important. When whether, fending off, malicious actors or making sure that you provide the AI tool with as much brand information as possible. And what this means in practice means cleaning up your review profiles, cleaning up third-party general profiles on third-party sites. This includes for local, like your Google business profiles and your Yelp profiles. This means revisiting affiliate. Are you doing that work? Do you need that work to help you get third-party placement and include more details about your site? This also includes, or your brand, this also includes fleshing out your brand information on your site directly. So not just having that singular about us page, but having several about pages that talk about your history, your timeline, your specifics, your team, things like that.
So what I find so interesting about that is there are lots of tactics you just talked about, obviously, tons of
Mhm.
tactics. But as kind of the higher level thought that I keep going to is how are you really clear in who you are as a company and what you do? And like if you can do that and you can talk to your customers about that reason, then you'll win. Like that's what I think I'm hearing. And to me, that I love that so much because that's like what we're all supposed to be doing at the heart of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
but it gets really easy to get kind of bogged down in all of these tactics and all of these things. But if you're clear, I mean, tell me if I'm saying what you're saying correctly, but what I heard is if you're truly clear on what you do for your customers and you tell that story in a very good way, like it will help you. And then the AI can tell that story too.
Absolutely. And making sure that you're telling it in detail, which we're not used to doing on our pages. Yeah.
But I think we are used to storytelling. We're used to doing that in different mediums. And now it's just kind of like, how do you do it in a medium that allows the robots and not just the people too? But if
Hmm.
you're clear on that message, like
Yeah.
that's going to help you. And that's going
Yeah.
to build long-term value, right?
Definitely. You want to shout it from the rooftops more than ever before. Spread it everywhere. Hmm.
So would you say kind of is that the, obviously there's going to be a lot of people with tactics and things matter, but if you kind of were to have one takeaway for someone like myself who's not the practitioner,
Yeah.
what would that takeaway be?
Yeah. I mean, the takeaway from this conversation that I really want decision makers to understand, especially with the use of AI, its role in building our strategies and things like that, is don't confuse access to information with strategy. It's a big difference. And that's where we get that differentiation of that AI is a tool. It can generate thousands of recommendations. It'll never run out. It'll just keep slicing and dicing every which way. The real challenge is knowing, well, which 5 or 10 do I actually implement to move my business forward? And that's where we circle back around to that experience that humans bring and that human judgment that
Yes,
we.
I may have gotten in an argument with one of my AI tools over this yesterday. I may have started going down a rabbit hole and finally had to be like, enough, I'm rebooting you. Like, I disagree. We're starting over. So I'm laughing because yes, sometimes it does sound very sure of all of its recommendations, but maybe when you put on your experience brain, it's confidently wrong.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely had to go change a few prompts in an agent yesterday when I was like, stop it. But yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
So kind of along those lines, kind of coming to the end here, I wanted to ask a question. So being, helping those business owners and those decision makers, better understand AI use and when AI should be brought in and how it should be used by those people that they have working on their site. What has LQ actively done to effectively incorporate AI for real benefit for its clients?
Well, I think I talked a little about LQ Brain, which is our agentic AI platform. It's been going on behind the scenes a lot for some time now, and it's starting to get rolled out to kind of more front-facing places for our clients. But it's a lot of things, frankly. So it's a comprehensive agentic AI platform. But I think where it's really useful is kind of things like you're talking about, right? How do you get a ton of information distilled down to a few points? How do you use it to build more competitive advantage? How do you ensure that the strategies that you're running are more data driven? And I could spend, hours talking about all of the ways it does that. But to me, that's really what I'm getting at is how do we get ourselves more data and signals to be able to get be in that field from the highest point. So I think LQ Brain's been really helpful with that. And the other one, right, we didn't talk about it much, but we have the vision platform, LQ Vision, which allows us to understand how AI is talking. And like I said, it's the foundation to all of our AEO and organic strategies because when we actually understand how you're showing up, when you're showing up, where you're showing up, that's how you build strategies. So I guess it goes back to the same boring thing we've been doing for a long time. I believe that having data and having data-driven decisions is how you get the best results. But now we're in a moment where we have way better tools. Man, I think back to the days where I literally was typing ads into Yahoo. If I had had half these tools, like could have been a
Oh,
completely different thing, right? So the
yeah,
tools are evolving. The tools are fantastic. The tools get us there a lot faster. But to me, it's really about the same kind of heart of how do we make very smart, empowered, data-driven decisions to build
yeah,
strategy. But,
definitely.
you know, I gotta say it's interesting now. It's more
Yeah,
fun to get to use all these tools to go do it.
it definitely
Less
is.
stitching and a lot more of the fun parts.
Hmm. For sure.
Cool. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to discuss. Always enjoy getting to dive a little deeper into organic with you, as it's been
Oh,
really fascinating to watch how it's been evolving these past few years.
yeah, as well. Thank you for chatting with me. I love it.
Awesome. And if anyone's ever curious about AI strategies and what to do for your own business, don't hesitate to reach out or get your free scorecard to see how you're doing in AI search today. Thanks.